My name
This
is Ursula
conference will now be
Robinson.
recorded.
My name is Ursula Robinson, and I am the Executive Director of PACE of the Triad. We are so glad that you all have joined us for our COVID and COVID vaccination call today. We hope that we'll be able to answer all of your questions that you may have about COVID and particularly about the vaccine. As a healthcare organization, we believe the vaccination is very important for everyone to get in order to stop the spread of this virus. In case you haven't heard, over 385,000 people have died from COVID. However, no one has died from the vaccine. So again, today we're hoping to educate you with just the facts, the scientific facts, so that you can make an educated judgment about the vaccine. I have a few staff members with me, and I hope I don't leave someone off. First of all, let me let you know that Dr. Robert Culler, our medical director, is on the call with us today, as well as Dr. Julie Williams, who's going to be on the call to address questions as well. We have Nidra Baldwin, who's our outreach and education director. We have Lucilia Morrow, who's our site director. And we have Adria Smith, who's working at the background for the recording of this call. Let me also say to you, when you're speaking, please do not use your name because we are recording this call and we want it to remain confidential because we will be posting this video or this call on our YouTube website so that other people can get the same information that you all are getting today. So when you speak, just please don't use your name. Another thing to remind you of is if you're not speaking, please make sure your phone is on mute so that we do not have the background noise and everyone can hear the speakers loud and clear. To the staff members, if you would please repeat the question just to make sure that everyone on the call has heard it, I would greatly appreciate it. Again, this is Ursula Robinson with PACE of the Triad, and we're looking forward to the call today. I'm now going to turn the call over to Dr. Robert Culler, our medical director. Dr. K, please take it.
Thank you, Ursula. This is Dr. Kohler. Good afternoon, all. And in case you just signed on, I'll just repeat a couple of things there. This is a call-in for an opportunity for participants and caregivers to ask about COVID and the COVID vaccine, any concerns they may have, any questions they may have. So on the line is myself, Dr. Robert Kohler. I'm the medical director. Dr. Julie Williams is also with us. Ursula Robinson is the program director, the executive director. Lucilia is the site manager, and Nidra is marketing, and she's also on the line. So as Ursula mentioned, if you're not speaking, please mute your phones. And when you do ask a question, we ask you not to identify yourselves because we want to make sure we maintain patient confidentiality. So, this is a concerning but hopeful time in our lives here right now. The pandemic is getting worse by the day. Thousands of Americans are dying every day from this COVID pandemic, and it's really accelerating, and that's very worrisome for all of us. That's both local here in Greensboro, in Guilford County, Rockingham County, but also throughout the state and throughout our country and our world. The light is at the end of the tunnel, though. There are now 2 vaccines that have become available over the last month. We are so excited about them. It's almost miraculous about how quickly and how efficiently they were developed and manufactured. They are incredibly effective and they seem to be extremely safe. So we're very excited that we finally have a really good weapon to combat this pandemic. As you'll hear, we will definitely recommend the vaccine to every person, every American. We definitely want to recommend it to all of our participants and the caregivers as well. I do have some hot off the press updates. It's really exciting because some of us have already received our vaccines. We had many PACE staff members get vaccinated just yesterday. I was one of them. My shoulder is a little bit sore, but otherwise I feel great, and we've all done just fine. We also had 9 participants immunized yesterday, and we've had several other participants immunized last week through when they were in the nursing home, they got immunized through their facilities. On a personal note, my mother got immunized last week, and she did just fine. So it's exciting. We're starting to get better supply with the vaccine. It's still not where we want it. You may have heard that in the news that we have the vaccine. We have had 10 million Americans already vaccinated with their first dose. And the supply is building up, but it's taking time to go through the channels. It has to go through the state and then out to the local health departments and to local hospitals, and also to major pharmacies like CVS and Walgreens. So it's making its way through those channels. Eventually, it will also make its way to PACE of the Triad. We have orders in to get the vaccine. We are hopeful that we can get it in the next couple of weeks, but we're not completely sure yet. But we're also looking at other avenues of making sure our participants get the vaccine, and that may be using our partner facilities such as Wellspring and Cone Hospital. We can work with the health department and pharmacies as well as necessary, because we want everybody to get the vaccine so we can get immunized and hopefully get this virus, this pandemic under control. So right now, I'm going to start opening it up for questions. I want you to ask any questions you can think of, any concerns you may have. I know there's a lot of information out there. Some of it's true, some of it's not true, and it's hard to know the difference. So you may hear something, it's like, does that make sense? Is that really accurate? And Dr. Williams and I are going to try to give you the best information that we can. It's in our advantage to try to be as truthful and upfront with what we know and what we may not know. So I think I'll go ahead and stop right there and ask somebody to go ahead and ask the first question. So go ahead.
I have a question. I have 2 questions.
Thank you.
2 questions, if you don't mind. I heard that in the United Kingdom, they're just giving everybody a dose, and they may have to wait and get not in the 3 weeks or 4 weeks time limit. They may have to wait on that. Do you think the United States is going to do that? And
yes, go ahead. What's your second question?
My second question, let me see if I can read it here. I'll ask you after you finish because I can't read what I scribbled down quickly.
Well, I'll go ahead and answer the first question, and then you can check on your writing. You got it?
Yes, I have it.
Okay, go ahead.
Are there any very odd questions that you all have been asked in the other 2 call-ins that might be of interest to us that we may not think of, that we would like to hear the answers to? Anything that maybe most people wouldn't think of, anything really far-fetched maybe. But
yeah, I'll answer that second question first. The second question that I heard was, are there any weird, oddball stuff that people are asking about that we haven't mentioned on the prior calls? And one that just immediately jumps to mind is there was this rumor out there that the vaccine was somehow injecting a computer chip into you so the government could track everybody. And that's crazy. We should all know that from common sense. But still, there's that rumor out there, and many people actually believe that. So that's one of the strange things that I've heard. Dr. Williams may have some more. So I'm going to turn the next part to Dr. Williams. And Dr. Williams, any oddball questions? And also, we've also heard that the United Kingdom and maybe the United States is going to prioritize and give the first dose first without necessarily having all the second doses in hand. So, Dr. Williams, do you want to go ahead and answer that?
Dr. Kohler, which one would you like? More unusual questions or address the dosing sequence?
Yeah, go with the unusual questions first.
Okay. One unusual question arises from social media and has been pretty extensively spread, and that is that the vaccine can change our DNA. I think this concern came about because of the way our new vaccines work. They use some messages that are genetic messages to teach our body how to make particular proteins to help us become immune to the virus. But that genetic material in no way can even enter the nucleus of our cells where our DNA is. So there's no earthly way that any of our DNA or genetic makeup could be changed. And that seems far-fetched in some ways, but maybe not so far-fetched in others. But just keep in mind that the scientists and the researchers who have been working so hard on developing this, they have their hearts in the right place. They want this to be a successful and very safe vaccine. And there isn't any ill intent behind the science that was used to create it. It's really exciting, actually, the technology that's been used, and they've been working on it for years. So I would say that's one of our more unusual questions. And then I think we've got some other ones that have come up on prior calls, but we'll see if they arise on this call first. All right, so to address the other question, which is the observation that Europe has decided to vaccinate everybody at least once before they go back and give the second dose. They're doing that for a couple of reasons, and the United States is very likely to follow suit. They're doing it because of limitations in immunization quantity, so they would like everybody to get at least some immunity. And the other reason is because the pandemic is spreading faster than it was before. So it's even more important for us to get control of the disease. At this point, science tells us that there should be no problem in delaying that second shot. The second shot is considered a booster. The first shot does give us some immunity, but not complete immunity. The second shot increases that level of immunity to over 95% getting sick with the virus. So one shot is helpful, 2 shots is terrific. I hope that answers the question. But we do feel in the medical field that delaying a second dose is going to be just fine for the reasons that have been outlined for us. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Good. Wonderful. Thank you. Who else has a question, please?
Yes, I have a question.
Great.
I would like to know, do you recommend to have a COVID test done before the vaccine?
Another great question. Okay, good. So the quick answer is no, it's not necessary. If a person has had COVID in the past, suppose you knew it, or even if you didn't know you had COVID, say a month ago or 6 months ago, you do have some immunity to a reinfection. It doesn't seem to be 100% though, because some people have been getting reinfected. The vaccine seems to be much more effective in generating immunity compared to the natural infection. So if you've had COVID in the past, or you think you might have had it, or you're not sure if you've had it, you still should get the vaccine to make sure that you have the best immunity that you can get. The only possible exception is if you're sick. If you're sick with COVID, you should probably wait until you're feeling better and then get the vaccine. That's really the only exception. So if you're sick with symptoms such as fever and shortness of breath and cough, you probably should get tested to make sure you're not acutely sick with COVID. And in that case, we would treat you and support you until hopefully you recover. And then we would give you the vaccine maybe 2 weeks later or something. But otherwise, if you've had it before, if you've been exposed to it, it's still a very good idea to get the vaccine, immediately, and you don't have to have a test to clarify that. Dr. Williams, do you want to add anything to that, or do you think I covered that?
I think that's a great answer. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Thank you so much, because I was worrying about that. Yes.
Good. I know there's another question out there. I heard somebody speak earlier. Go ahead.
Yes. How will the vaccine compare to if the participant is taking a lot of medication already? How will you know if it's compatible?
Yeah, that's another really good one. And actually, we had that question just 2 days ago, and I like that one. Dr. Williams, I'm going to let you go first with this one.
Sure. Here's the good news. The vaccine is compatible with every medication that's prescribed. The vaccine doesn't have any interactions with medicines because it is operating in completely different systems. So it is equally safe in somebody who's on 10 medicines as it is somebody who's on no medicines. Similarly, the vaccine is equally safe in somebody that's got lots of medical conditions as compared to somebody with no medical conditions. So usually prescription medicines don't impact the development of immunity against a disease. That's just not how most of our medications work. So the good news is that should not cause anybody to hesitate whatsoever. And that's the case with most vaccines, so we're very happy about that. And that's such a good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is Dr. Kohler. I'll actually expand on that a bit because the question was, if you're on a medication or many medicines, could there be an interaction there? And the answer that we heard was no, and it's very safe. But I think people also wonder, gosh, I have all these medical problems. My immune system is not good. Maybe some people worry I'm too old and frail. Maybe I shouldn't get the vaccine. And actually, the studies have shown the exact opposite. Those people should get the vaccine even more than anyone else. They've given the vaccine out to immunosuppressed people, to people with multiple medical problems, and they are actually the people who are at highest risk for getting sick and dying from COVID. So we want those people to be vaccinated. And you know, I saw this cool picture of I think the first woman in the United Kingdom, in England, who got the vaccine. She was 101 years old. And so, you know, that thought, oh my gosh, I'm too old to get the vaccine, that doesn't really fit here. It's actually, the older you are, the more important it is to get the vaccine. My mother's 92 years old. She just got it last week, and she did this just fine. So I agree with that totally. And the question actually did come up yesterday. Someone had some immunosuppression. Their immune system wasn't so good. And I said, yes, they definitely need the vaccine. It's safe for that person, and it's even more important for that person. So go ahead. Give me another question. I love it. You're doing great.
Do we know when the second dose will be administered? And after the first initial dose, I'm sorry, two questions. After the first initial dose, how will we know or recognize the signs of effectiveness?
Yeah, so the second dose depends on the vaccine. There's two vaccines that are now available. There's one from the manufacturer, Pfizer, and the other one is from Moderna. And they did their studies just a little bit differently. The Pfizer vaccine, they repeated the second dose after 3 weeks, and they found that worked just fine. And the Moderna vaccine, they repeated the dose after 4 weeks, and that worked just fine. So that's the recommendation. If you receive the Moderna vaccine, for example, ideally you would get the second dose in 4 weeks. We have systems to schedule follow-up appointments, to remind people to come back in. But as I think somebody asked in the very first question, if they're giving out all these first doses to people, will they not have enough for that second dose? And yes, it's possible that second dose might be delayed. It might not be 4 weeks, it might be 5 weeks or 6 weeks. And even if it's later than that, it's still equally effective. There's no harm with waiting. It's not wasted. We want to get that second dose in 4 weeks so we can really give full immunity. After that second dose, they're guessing about 2 weeks after that you've achieved full immunity, as much immunity as you're going to get. Nothing's 100%, but it looks like this one is 95%. Both of these vaccines are 95% effective. So did that answer that question there?
Well, so if you've taken Pfizer on the first dose, will you be taking Pfizer on the second dose, or will it
Yes.
be Moderna? Okay.
Right, yeah. The question is, can you mix the two manufacturers? And it's conceivable that you could, but it's not recommended at this time. So so the plan would be if you receive the Pfizer, the first dose, the second dose would be Pfizer. Same thing with Moderna. If the first dose was Moderna, you'd want the second dose to be Moderna as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure, that's good. I like it. Thank you. What other questions or things that you've heard out there or concerns or worries that you might have about the vaccines?
Well, comparing it to the flu shot, as far as people are saying that, well, maybe it has traces of COVID in it to be effective. I mean, I'm sure that's probably just a rumor.
Good. Yeah, that is a rumor. That's not correct. But I'm going to hand that off to Dr. Williams, and she can tell you about the vaccine, whether it has particles of the virus in it, and how it compares to the influenza, the flu shot that we get every year.
Yeah, so the question is, as I understand it, about the flu vaccine, and if the flu vaccine might have some COVID particles in it. Is that the correct question?
No, it was comparing the flu vaccine with the COVID vaccine, as far as, you know, how people say that flu vaccine has traces of the flu in it, so they're actually giving you the flu. So I'm asking if the COVID vaccine compares to that in any kind of way.
Oh, yes. Okay, I understand. The two vaccines are completely different. They use completely different technology. There is no particle at all of COVID in the COVID vaccine. What it essentially is a message. So it's like a little coded message that is a little coded message that is taken from the virus that tells our body to make proteins that are recognized as being from COVID. And that's considered an invader. So the body will make antibodies, which are the little soldiers that fight against those particles. So much different. And it's actually a very exciting technology because it's easier to make. So I anticipate that it will probably be used for future viruses that come down the pike as well. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, this is Dr. Kohler. I was going to expand upon that and talk about different types of vaccines that are out there. So there are many different kinds of vaccines. They're what we call live attenuated, which actually is the virus that's been changed in a way so that it doesn't make a person sick. Then they have dead virus, but then those are vaccine strategies that have been used in the past, and some vaccines are made like that, and that's okay. This technology that Dr. Williams is talking about is that messenger RNA, and the way I like to think about it is that this new vaccine is actually a recipe. You can print out a recipe from the internet. You have it on a piece of paper, and it tells you what ingredients to put in there to make your cake or whatever you're making. That's really what. So the recipe, the piece of paper you have in your hand, is not the cake. It doesn't have any cake in it, but it gives you the recipe about how to make the cake. And once you make the cake, then you can, or make the protein that we're talking about. Then you develop antibodies to that and immunity to that, and it protects you. So from Dr. Williams is right. From a scientific point of view, it's very exciting because it seems to be very safe. It doesn't have any particles of the virus in there. It can't give you the infection. It's a recipe. It's a set of instructions that tells your body what protein to produce. Does that help? Any questions about that?
Yeah.
Or thoughts about that?
You. Absolutely.
Good.
Because some people were saying that if indeed it were like a influenza shot, then caregivers should also be concerned because once you take the influenza shot, then the person that's caring for you may in fact get the flu.
Yeah, and the new influenza shots are not like that. Actually, an example that could be close to that is like the old polio vaccines. They actually work.
Okay.
Yeah, so but that's not even used nowadays. Um, but actually, I'm glad you brought up the flu shot. And so how does the COVID vaccines compare to the flu shots? And it depends on they're different because you have to get the flu shot every year. And the reason for that is because the influenza virus is a different class of virus and it keeps changing all the time. So that you have to have a new vaccine every year to give you immunity. The COVID virus doesn't seem to be like that. It doesn't really change too much. It changes a little bit, but not too much. So it's very possible that the vaccines we're getting now will never need a booster, or if it does need a booster, it'll be just maybe one in 1 year or a few years. We don't really know at this point. But it's not a situation where you have to have the shot every year, like the flu shot. Dr. Williams, do you want to talk any further about how the flu vaccine and COVID vaccine compare or contrast?
No, I think that covers it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. In terms of side effects, I saw a comparison. The COVID vaccine seems to cause a little bit more of a sore arm than the flu shot, but they're virtually the same otherwise. I had my flu shot I had my COVID shot yesterday, and it felt the same. It's like a little needle, but it didn't really hurt much. The shoulder's a little sore, and I've read that it can make people's arms a little bit more sore than the flu shot, but it's actually kind of a good sign in a way that shows that your body's reacting to it, and you want your body to react to it. That's how it produces antibodies and boosts your immune system. And the other side effects that I've heard of, especially after the second dose of the COVID, you can sometimes feel fluish for a day or so. About 3% of people, feel bad enough that they have to kind of stay in bed for a day. But in a way that's certainly a lot better than getting the actual COVID infection. So go ahead. What other questions or thoughts do we have out there?
I have another statement, I guess, and I guess I want to know if it's true, and I believe it because I think Dr. Fauci said it. But they say the vaccine was able to be made so quickly because they used other diseases like SARS and the disease that was hurting the little children, babies in Mexico. I can't remember the name of that they used some of the techniques or whatever, the way they were developed to help them learn how to make this one. And that was one of the things that speeded it up to make it go so quickly, to be made quickly. And I was wondering
you are very well informed. That's excellent. I'm going to let Dr. Williams talk a little bit more about that the SARS virus, this COVID virus, is not a completely new virus. We've had some experience with these types of viruses over the years, so we did have a head start. Dr. Williams, do you want to tell us more about this?
Sure, and thank you for introducing that idea. You're exactly right. Initially, there was a lot of concern expressed in the media and among ourselves in conversation that the vaccine rollout seemed to be too quick compared to how long it's taken in the past to develop vaccines. But there was a reason why it happened as quickly as it did. Number one, it was a much more extensive pandemic situation than the prior SARS vaccine was. So we knew, as a population, we knew that things needed to be acted on quickly. And second, you're exactly right. This type of virus had been explored previously with this new mRNA technology. And that was a very new technology at the time. This was after 2010, I believe, or maybe even in the decade before that. But it was put on the shelf because it wasn't needed anymore, and there wasn't a lot of interest in pursuing a vaccine for a disease that went away. But when this coronavirus popped up, the first thing the scientists did was say, okay, this is a new disease, a new virus. Let's go back to what seems to be the most familiar in our past and start there. And they took that technology off the shelf. And interestingly, different companies, different research institutions came up with very similar approaches independently. And their approaches worked. So that is one of the reasons why it was so quick. The other reason it was so quick was because there were the full resources of the federal government applied to support these researchers, and the researchers themselves did something that they're not used to doing. They shared a lot of information with each other so that there wouldn't be a lot of reinventing the wheel at the same time. So lots of things came together, and it is remarkable that they've been able to come up with something so effective and so safe. And it has been carefully researched. It was not influenced by any external players, and we feel very comfortable with it.
Well,
Great
thank
question.
you.
Your statement.
I feel like I felt so much better after I heard that. I think a lot more people need to know about that, because it makes you have a reason why and how they could develop it so quickly.
Oh, you're not alone in saying that it needs to be well publicized. When the vaccine rollout happened, it seemed like the negative aspects of vaccine, which were not true, were being publicized more than the positive reports and how we came to this point. So you're right. You're right. We hope that once more people see that it's been safe and effective, we'll get more buy-in.
Yeah, and I know myself a few months ago when they were starting to get close to actually releasing the vaccine, I was wondering, was politics playing a role here? Were they rushing it too quickly? But I've been very reassured. I've seen the studies. I know it's gone through the FDA. Politics is involved in everything, but they really did keep this separate from politics. And I feel very confident that science made the decision here, not politics. So I'm comfortable with it, and I received it. There was another question that I had heard about this. People were worried about the new strain that they've heard about, the new strain of COVID virus in the United States and the United Kingdom and South Africa. And what does that mean exactly? And my understanding is that the virus can mutate, can change, and that's kind of a normal thing for viruses to do, to change a little bit. And there's been a natural change in the virus in these strains where it becomes more contagious. It doesn't become more serious at all, and it doesn't, the treatment is the same, and the vaccine seems to work just as well on these new strains, but these new strains are a little bit more contagious. But good news, we don't have to change the vaccine at all. The vaccine we have now is going to work just fine on that more contagious strain. So, we're fortunate with that as well.
If you don't mind, I would like to ask. I look at a lot of television. That's why I know some of the things that I'm talking about here. I don't know for sure, but I heard someone say something about something else strange coming from Japan, but I haven't heard it but one time, and I didn't hear an explanation. It was kind of like, well, was this new one coming from Japan? And I just wondered if the same one, the variant that the UK and that we have here now, or is there a third one variant?
I had not heard that about Japan. Dr. Williams, have you heard anything about Japan at all? Japanese
No,
strain?
I haven't. But, the virus scientists, they're called virologists, and the infectious disease doctors and scientists are trying to prepare us that, yes, there will be changes in the virus, because that's what it does in nature. The more it spreads through a population, and that population could be people like the COVID or animals. Some viruses go through animals. The more it spreads from person to person, the more of a chance there is for it to change. And those scientists are monitoring the virus all over the world. And in the United States, they're looking at it regionally and even locally to find out how it's changing. The changes are called mutations, and the word mutate is kind of scary because we associate it with zombies and monsters and having 7 fingers and 2 heads. But mutations are a normal part of how viruses and bacteria and even our own cells change. And if it comes to the point where it looks like it's changed beyond the vaccine, then the vaccine will be altered to address it. But, we just have to kind of keep our ears open and wait for the scientists to advise us on what's happening. So I hadn't heard about the one from Japan, but I'm anticipating that we'll hear about different sorts of viruses in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you for that question. That was interesting. I'll have to look at that. What other questions we have?
Yes. With the virus changing or mutating, if you will, how do we keep track of that? And in addition, the virus is an airborne disease, so how do we actually control it, especially if everyone doesn't feel comfortable with taking the vaccine?
Wonderful questions. So the mutation, you could think of it as a book. If you had a big book, 300 pages, and it has, in the old days, before there were printing presses, you had scribes that would copy out the books and make copies that way with their hand, by just writing out all those letters and words and sentences over 300 pages, and then they would have another book, and then they would do it again and again. So you can imagine the same sort of thing happens with viruses. And every once in a while, as you can imagine with a book, somebody might make a mistake and put an A instead of an O or something like that. You might be a mistake with one of the letters in there. And that's really what happens with the viruses. You have a little change in one of the letters there. And most of the time, those changes don't do anything. Sometimes they are not good and the virus doesn't do well. But every once in a while, there can be a change that will make it more contagious, which is what happens now. So that change, those changes are common and normal and to be expected. Now, as I was talking, I forgot your second question. If you could repeat that, please.
Okay. I was saying, how do we ensure that, everyone is not going to take the vaccine?
That's right.
So with it being airborne, how do we ensure, or
Yes.
we can't really make promises that it's going to be this effective, 99% effective, when we don't really know?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is part of the problem, too. We know that the most effective way of getting this pandemic under control is if we can achieve what we call herd immunity. So we need enough people to say, yes, I'll take the virus. And once we get to, the magic number, we're not really clear.
The vaccine.
Go ahead. So saying
you meant the virus, and I think you meant to say to take.
Am I not? Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we believe, Dr. K. Dr. K, you said you need more people to take the virus, and we know you meant vaccine. We just wanted to clarify that.
I'm sorry. Yes.
That's all right.
All right. So to get the pandemic truly under control, we need to achieve what we call herd immunity. And if we can get enough people to be immune to the virus, then we can sort of starve the virus, and there's no place for the virus to attack because all these human beings are now immune. And to make people immune, you give them the vaccine, or they get sick and recover and have immunity that way. But the best way is for people to get vaccinated. So we need maybe 70%, 80% of our country, our population, to get vaccinated to truly starve the virus so it has no one else to infect anymore. And that's one of the things we're we know it's going to be a challenge. It's natural and normal and expected to have concerns about something new, and there's what we call vaccine hesitancy, and that's really a normal, an expected occurrence. But it also makes controlling the pandemic more difficult. And if we can somehow convince at least the majority of people to get the vaccine, those people who didn't get vaccinated will be protected because of the herd being immune. Yes, it can be airborne. It's droplet-borne also, so we have to continue to use those other measures such as masks and washing your hands and distancing. We'll have to do that until we can achieve that final herd immunity. If we, as a country, go gung-ho and everybody gets vaccinated, we could get this under control within a year. If we're not so gung-ho, it could take longer. Dr. Williams, do you want to add anything further to that, or did I misspeak at all?
Oh, no, I was just going to have you reiterate that we'll still need to do our 3 W's after we get our vaccine. So let's say those of us who got our vaccine yesterday, let's say we're successful in getting our second one in a month. After that, and during that time, while we're waiting, we still have to wear a mask and wash our hands and watch our distance with other people. So we've got a long way to go. We've got all the tools we need to be able to get this virus under control. We've got wonderful tools. We've got great guidelines. We've got a great vaccine. We've got great medical professionals and nurses and pharmacists to give the vaccine. We just need to, as a population, take advantage of those tools and get rid of this once and for all.
And Ursula, you had you also talked about how people can have different levels of comfort and stepping forward to get the vaccine. Some people are saying, yeah, I'm ready to get the vaccine right now. And some people want to wait, and that's okay also, just to see how other people do. So, Ursula, do you want to talk about that, those tendencies?
Yeah, there's some research out there about how people adjust to change, particularly new things. And what they discovered is that there are some people that whenever there's a new thing that comes up, they're among the first to be willing to explore it. So they're called early explorers. They're willing to take risks. They tend to be called innovative people. And so what we're seeing with the vaccine as well is that those early adopters is what they're called, that they are more likely to be the ones that are saying, hands up, I want that vaccine first, please. And then you have people who are called late adopters or mid-level adopters. These are folks who, I want to watch this thing just a little bit. Let me see how those early adopter people do first, and then I'll make my decision. Or I'm going to do a little more research on this, and then I'll make my decision. No type is right. It's just who you are, and it's okay however you decide to do it. We just hope that you do it.
Thank you so much. So how do you feel? So for those people out there who are hesitant about the virus, would you like to share any of the worries or concerns that you might have? Or if there's any other questions, go ahead.
Sorry. I just wanted to add on to what was already said, that and people do have a tendency to fear what they don't know or the unknown. Yes. So I think also it's very important, and I think you said it once, is getting it out there to the public and making them feel, like was just currently suggested, more comfortable about, taking the virus, giving them, information that will make them feel that this is a good thing. This is good for you. It will help you and not hurt you, because a lot of older people and younger people, they don't like change. They don't like new things. So this is something new for all of us, for the entire world. It's a pandemic, epidemic, so we all have to get used to the changes. Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that fear of the unknown, the fear of the change. and especially if you've been lied to in the past, if you
Yeah.
got things that didn't come through as it was portrayed, that can lead to distrust and hesitancy. So yeah, these are all part of our world today that that we have to work with. Thank you for that comment.
This is Dr. Williams. I'm so glad that you raised that comment for the group, and we at PACE are trying to do our best to get out some good information to help people make decisions. And I would like to ask those on the call today, caregivers or participants or family members, is there any information that you feel like you haven't yet received that would be helpful for you to make your decision? Or any other comments about how we might be able to best communicate with folks about this very important issue in our lives right now?
I think one thing people mostly worry about, a lady I know had a baby, and she was not going to give it the measles and the other shots that babies have to get. They're putting viruses, germs in the baby's body, and I don't want that. If they realize this is not a live virus, and I think you said it's not a dead virus either. Did I hear Dr. Julie or somebody say that? I think if people...
That's correct.
I think of it, and I'm probably wrong, more of as a chemical that they created to fight it. And I think that is one of the most important things that was worrying me and several people that I know.
And I would go beyond chemical.
Thing to say, right.
Yeah, I would actually say it's a recipe. I like that term because it's really a set of instructions.
Right. It's like a biologic instructions to teach our body how to be immune. There's not a single part of the virus in that vaccine. So
there's no artificial chemicals or things like that.
Is there anything alive in it, though?
There's nothing alive. There's no animal products in it. There's no egg products in it. So if you're allergic to eggs, it's not an issue. There's nothing alive in it at all. It's just really a code, a set of instructions that are injected, and then they go to our cells, and they tell our cells, the factory producing parts of our cells, okay, you factories, you produce this kind of protein. You produce a protein, and then the body sees that protein, produces antibodies and immunity to that. So it's a couple steps along the line, but that immunity is what eventually just protects you against the virus when it does come around. It was really kind of interesting.
Easier for me to understand that it's nothing live. I thought of it as chemicals, because the terminology you all use is not necessarily something maybe a lot of people like me would understand, but that helped me a lot when I found out I didn't think it was anything live. And thank you all so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Dr. Kohler?
Yes.
I think it's good that you brought up that a lot of people are hesitant if they've been lied to previously.
Yes.
I know in the African American community, we can often be hesitant because of, for example, what happened with the Tuskegee experiment. This is Wendy, physical therapist, if any of participants or caregivers are trying to figure out who this is. But I just wanted to mention that Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, I think I'm saying that correctly, she goes by Kizzy, is an African-American woman who is actually praised as one of the key scientists. There's two main scientists, and she's one of those two who helped develop the Moderna vaccine at the NIH. And she is actually originally from Hillsborough, North Carolina, and got her doctorate from UNC Chapel Hill.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. And just to expound upon that also, the studies, people worry, well, gosh, the studies also include African Americans and minorities and Latinos, and 30,000 of the study folks were one of those minorities. So it's been studied in those groups, and it's shown to be just as effective and just as safe. So the science is there. The trust has to be earned, and it's going to take some time to earn that trust with a lot of people. Some people are ready to jump right out there, the explorers, and some people, you have to earn the trust, and we want to be able to do that as well, because the goal is to get rid of this vaccine, or get rid of the pandemic, and getting as many people vaccinated as possible will help that. So we're winding up close to the hour. Does anybody have other questions or thoughts? We would like to hear anything more you might have in mind.
Okay, so far, this is the only method or tool that we're working on to fight this virus. Do we foresee any other techniques or what have you in future efforts?
Right. So we're working on it from multiple different angles. So prevention is what the vaccine is about. The 3 W's are what the vaccine is about. But then it's also therapeutics. We're working on new ways of trying to treat the virus once a person gets it. And there's also many different vaccines out there that are in studies. There's a 3rd vaccine from AstraZeneca, which has been approved in other parts of the world, that seems to be very helpful and very effective. And I've heard there's probably 30 more vaccines that are out there in studies right now. I know China has one, Russia has one. So there's many people approaching this with new vaccines, new therapeutics. But some of it is kind of, very simple. Just not getting exposed to the actual particles, and the only way you can do that is with barriers, with masks and washing your hands, and being far enough away from another person so you won't actually catch it that way. Dr. Williams, you want to add anything further to that?
I don't. Yes, just to reiterate that the science is ongoing, the research is ongoing to try to cure it. Right now, there's not a cure. To try to come up with more improved methods of testing. Everybody's concerned about this in the scientific community, right alongside us as people just trying to live our lives. I last read that there were 100 vaccines in trial right now. That's wow. A lot. That's a lot. So there's going to be more information coming out in the weeks and the months and probably even the years ahead. But eventually, viruses like this go away. The pandemic moves through the population, and either people get very sick and recover with their antibodies, or they get very sick and they die. That's what we're trying to prevent. Or they're very lucky and they get sick and they don't get they get infected, but they don't get very sick. But it's still spreading, and you have to think of everybody out there as being potentially infected, and then take your precautions. You can't see the virus. You can't tell if someone's infected. You just protect yourself, be smart, just like you have been all along, and eventually we'll get to the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or thoughts?
I did want to ask a question. This is Nidra Baldwin. For those of you who are on the call, and please unmute yourself so you can answer. Have you participated in the town hall meetings that we have hosted in the past? Because one of the things we want to do is, we'd like to get information out the best way that we can, but we are looking at doing things during different times and doing different methods. So is there anyone on the call who has never participated in the town hall meeting conference calls that we have done? So let me ask the question the other way. Are there people on the call now who have participated in the town hall meeting or conference call in the past?
All of them.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So one of the questions I do have, in terms of timing, is it difficult for you to get on the town hall meeting at 6 p.m., or would an earlier time during the day work better for you?
I'm
Anytime.
retired, so it doesn't make any difference to me.
Okay.
No, me neither. It doesn't mean too. It doesn't make any difference.
Okay. And I know we try to do the 6 o'clock time to try to help those that are working or have other responsibilities during the day. So I just like to say I appreciate you all being part of this call. The other thing is we also like to get as much information in the newsletter as we can. Particularly, I know in the January newsletter we did list some of the myths, COVID vaccine myths, as well as frequently asked questions. And so we'll continue to do this, and I will actually update and add some more frequently asked questions to the February newsletter, taking from some of the questions that we received from the call. So I appreciate all of the great questions you all were asking.
We appreciate you all doing all of these things.
Absolutely. And this is Ursula again. I want to also thank you all on behalf of PACE of the Triad for joining the call and for educating yourselves. There's nothing more powerful than knowledge. And so I appreciate you joining the call to obtain your knowledge. I also want to just share a word of caution with you, if I might, and that is be very careful about where you get your information from. Unfortunately, there is a lot of misinformation out there, particularly on social media. Please make sure that you are looking at your information from reputable organizations, research-oriented articles and things of that nature, and not from social media. I had my COVID test, by the way, yesterday. Well, actually, it was the day before yesterday. I was the first person in our organization to get the vaccine. And it was a little tickle in the top of my arm, and it was out in probably 2 seconds. I couldn't believe it was so quick. I was just so excited. I just ran up there and sat down and put my shirt down so she could do it. I even took a selfie of myself because I wanted to be able to show the staff that it had been done. And I just really felt good. I felt like not only was I helping myself, because of my family history, but I was also helping my family members as well as my community. So continue to pray about it. If that's something that you do, read as much as you can, ask as many questions as you can, and make your decision when it's right for you. And once again, thank you all for joining us. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call us here at PACE, okay? All right, everybody. Y'all take care now.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.